Welcome to my video series, Be Brilliant, 5 Ways to Propel Your Career and Your Life from Vanilla Success to Spectacular Triumph. I'm Alana Rosso and this is video number 2. And today's video is called, You Know More Than You Think You Know. So I used to believe there were two camps, two worlds basically. There was the camp where everyone knows everything, they're totally rocking it, and then there's me over here who knows way less, doesn't have as much to contribute, and maybe shouldn't be there. A little bit of that imposter syndrome. I really just saw things as like split in two. And I became so insecure. I struggled so much because I just kept thinking that everyone knows more than I do. And here's the secret. It's not a secret really, but everyone thinks that they don't know as much as the other person. So I have clients from all different backgrounds. I work with creative designers, but I also have people who are engineers and have literal PhDs, brilliant people. And they sometimes struggle with that insecurity, thinking that they don't know enough. But here's the thing too, that the knowledge comes from doing. And when we think we don't know enough, we stop moving forward, we stop doing, we stop stepping into that arena where we're actually going to have the experience so that we do know more. And the challenge then is to keep pushing ourselves into these situations where we can step up, step in that discomfort, and start to realize that we actually do know what we're doing. So I'm going to share another story with you about a job interview that I had that really changed my perception of my value, and it changed it for the better. And ever since this interview experience, I have developed great appreciation for the things that I do know, even though I have so much more to learn, which I love doing. This is also a great story for you if you're ever thinking about maybe not going on a job interview, because sometimes you get out of the job's interview something that you didn't expect. So spoiler alert, I did not get this job, but years ago, quite a few years ago, I was, a recruiter got me a job interview. It's a bank. Let's call the bank ABC Lexia. Okay, we'll just call it that. And it was for a graphic designer role, and it paid $90,000 a year. So it was actually a decent amount of money for a design job in Canada back then. So this is over 10 years ago. And I thought, you know what? I was in that phase of my life where I thought maybe a little bit of comfort would be good. Just like show up 9 to 5, and Starbucks in the building was kind of like, yeah, I can do this. So I go to the job interview. Of course, there's multiple rounds of interviews, and they kept talking. It was a whole bunch of different people interviewing. I think three different men. And they kept talking about these illustrations that would have to be done in the design department. And they sounded like really complicated, and they kept going on. And I was starting to get like more and more intimidated as this design process is going on. And I just like everything they talked about just seemed like a little bit out of my abilities. I had probably almost 10 years of design experience at this point. I was getting a little bit freaked out, to be honest. And so finally, the third interview comes along, and one of the people interviewing me was like, "Oh, come back to this like room," and it sounds dodgy, but come back here, and I'm going to show you the collateral that we actually produced. They actually did a lot of print design at the time, which was my specialty. And I said, okay. And so they start walking me through these brochures and these printed pieces, and they're showing them to me like they're these very elite pieces of works of art. And they're showing me these illustrations that they were talking about, which were basically like paper airplanes, like little icons, it was so not what I expected. And here I was this whole time doubting that I knew how to do this job, and like putting it on again, like into this camp of like, this is really complicated, I can't do this, and underestimating what I could do. And then I realized that these guys were just talking up this big game about this job. And maybe to them, this was complicated stuff. This was illustration work I could do literally with one eye closed. So I almost started laughing. No joke. I thought I was going to laugh because I was also really relieved. I was like, wow, I built this up. And also this idea that because the job paid, pretty well, that it was going to be more complicated, that it was like I wasn't going to know what I'm doing. So the lesson from that was to not take myself out of the game right away, to assume that I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't do that anymore. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to keep yourself in the game. Because here's the truth. I know more than I think I know. You know more than you think you know. We know more than we think we know. And we discount our value right off the bat. It happens all the time. And part of that is because we want to do things perfectly. So that little perfectionist comes out. Anyone who's a high achiever usually has some side of them that is a perfectionist or has that tendency. And high standards are great. I consider myself a high achiever. I will always be a high achieving person. But the perfectionism can slow us down, can really take us out of that game. And it plays with our mind and makes us think that we just don't know enough, because most things can be figured out, as you know, and it will help you tremendously as you're kind of trying to make your life into something that you love, that's more fulfilling, to realize that you can get in that game. You absolutely know what you're doing most of the time. And if you don't, you can figure it out. So thank you for joining me on this video. We are going to dive into another juicy topic in video number 3, which is to do with core values.